Aloha, hello. My name is Julia Christensen. I am absolutely amazed to be here. I'm so grateful for the invitation. Amazing format. I love the title, Social Bridges of the event. And I'd like to speak about some of our research that we've been doing with my dear colleague, Shahzad Hosseini, who is an Iranian dancer and choreographer based in the US. True interdisciplinary work that I'll take you through the learning curve here with me. And I would like to bridge between cultures with this. Let's see. I want to just briefly say where I work and invite you all to connect. So I work at the Max Planck Institute for Empirical Aesthetics in Frankfurt, which is a wonderful mission trying to, and sometimes very successfully, use scientific methods to explain the psychological, neuronal, and social cultural basis of aesthetic perceptions and judgments of observers of different art forms. We have social media channels, we have online experiments, events. Please join us. So as I said, this is Shahzad Hosseini, who is a performing artist, and myself, and I am also a former dancer, a classical ballet dancer. And when we met, this was very much our question: what can we learn from each other about the movements, the dances that we dance together? My main research that I will speak about today is about expressive body movement, how we use our body to express and our body to understand others' expressions. And when we dance, that happens all the time. And I just want to put a bridge back to the talk we just heard about one of the main treatment factors, which is expressivity. And this is what I'm so interested in. I'm coming at it from a different side, from the side of having been a dancer and now as an experimental psychologist wanting to investigate the mechanisms behind it and how what our prior experience with movement might do to our understanding of that movement when we see it in others. And you will see some of my drawings here too, because after I stopped my dance career, I can't move anymore in the way that I would like to. And I've started drawing, and I found out that I can express myself and what I can't do anymore with my body, also through lines on paper. And that's also a type of movement. So Shahzad and I met, and here was I, ballet dancer, used to a third wall, fourth wall, that sets apart the audience from the dancer. The dancer is somewhere there, highly systematized. To speaking to Shahzad, who was someone who came from a very imitative practice. Iranian dance does not have this third wall idea with the proscenium stage. It is much more from a culture and a background of a participatory type of engagement. Another difference, I don't really want to say that word, but another beautiful element of our conversation was the expression of different emotions, of different valences of emotions. So while people who are practicing Indian dance, Indian classical dance, like Kohinoor Dada, who we heard about in the talk by Emily yesterday, or people like me who are trained in ballet, we are used to use our body in dance to express different emotions. Like we're really taught to be sad, like use the same movement and show it sad or happy, and that the kinematics of that movement will differ. And it's not to say that people trained in other practices wouldn't do that intuitively as well, depending on how they feel, but that's the difference. They're not taught it specifically as a tool. It's just something that happens. And that is so valuable too, which is the what we found with the conversations with Shahzad. So Iranian dance is danced a lot also today in parties. Everybody dances. Everybody in the society will tell you, no, I don't dance. And then you go to a party and then have you met Iranians dancing? Wonderful. And there, the dance is for this upbeat expressivity of joy, dance at the yearly festivals, participatory. Right here. And then another beautiful element of our discussions was the way of teaching. So I came from this tradition of standing at the bar every day, doing my movements, repeating the same movements, a very highly systematized dance style, with a syllabus where you've got over 100 movements that you need to learn and know the semantics of how you're allowed to combine them and all that, to a practice which is very much in tune with how the human brain learns from birth, which is imitation. And concepts like I do a movement to the right and then I practice it to the left. This is such a ballet thing to be doing in Indian classical. That doesn't necessarily happen in other dance styles because you just do it to the right. And so finding a way to speak to each other with that. And we put it all together. And that's what I want to talk a little bit about now, into review. Which was recently published, where we proposed Iranian classical dance, and I'll do this and say why in a moment. I put it in quotation marks. We proposed it for empirical research, and then at the end I'll show you some of the empirical work that we have been doing. And we needed a little bit of a translator also sometimes, and we were so lucky to be able to collaborate with Professor Melanie Wald-Fuhrmann, who is one of the directors at the Max Planck Institute for Empirical Studies, who's an art historian. Because as you will see, we were doing interviews, and me as an empirical working scientist, interviews is a very difficult thing. So we were luckily able to work with her too. So I told you I said Iranian classical dance in quotation marks, and that's due to the fact that this classical idea is such a Western thing, and we grow up here in the West with thinking that's just how dance is systematized, and it actually is not. So the idea of the classical is, usually there's a syllabus, there is a known repertoire, and there is some great tradition, like there's some masters. So in ballet, it goes back to the Sun King at the courts of the 15th, 16th centuries, like very far back. But there's something similar also with the Iranian classical dance. It's just that it didn't get systematized in the same way because the dance culture is different. And the Michael Church is a very wonderful scholar, which is very interesting to read what he says about the other classical arts, which is just that it's not called classical. So the name of this dance style that I am also talking about today is elusive. So I say Iranian dance, Persian dance, classical dance, just for you to understand that it's not all as systematized as many of us here in the West are used to. So as I said, this is a dance style. When you start being in touch with it, you get sent videos on social media that are with this dance style. I can't show them here for obviously copyright questions, but I want to share them. Get in touch with me and I will share you funny videos of the Iranian dance style. So what is this dance style? Well, so Shahzad Khosendi and her family, they actually immigrated from Iran to the US in the 80s after Islamic Revolution. And she brought with her this dance tradition and then took the bridge over and met the Western dance traditions, and then actually tried at the first to systematize this dance style. And she published a book called The Art of Persian Dance. Now, today, Shahzad doesn't anymore refer to this dance style as Persian, but Iranian. So there you see the evolution is ongoing. And you saw me putting a picture of a dance style in there, or a dance move actually at the first slides, which is something like this. And it's actually one of the movements that they showed me first, and they used it to explain a concept to me in the Iranian culture, which is tarof or naz, which is very much a yes, but no. So in conversations, when we have a conversation, there will be, would you like some tea? No. But actually I do. So I say no with my hand, but my body is actually towards you. So, and this movement is very much part of Iranian dance all the time. You have people going there. And Shahzad calls it Del Rova. And in this video, I can't show you, but I want to show you, there's this little girl and she uses it all the time. And the Iranians go hiking is also very fun because they are dancing. And you see this movement there. And so Shahzad took these movements this is just an example, and really try to systematize. So how does this movement, where does it go? Where does it start? What is the transition between them? And like she really goes, it looks like, you know, what we also have in ballet books, you know, what is the syllabus of that particular movement? And she put that all into her book. And so we set out now to understand, you know, under the backdrop of what can we learn from each other with the effect of expressivity, and what is the effect of culture on these perceptions that we might have when we see this body language. And I just want to bridge back to Emily's talk yesterday, where she was talking about expertise in terms of movement expertise, so dancers who have trained for a long time. And here I speak about a specific type of other expertise, that is the cultural expertise we might have. So we conducted a lot of interviews over the pandemic, and it sort of showed us that what we see there. So we had 17 experts from Iran working outside Iran, some that were from before the Islamic Revolution in Iran, that had been working on actually building this dance tradition in Iran. It is at the moment heavily restricted inside Iran, especially for women. So humming again. So this dance is dance in various parts of the region. And it, is this really bugging me here a little bit? Okay, we can trace it back at present with bibliographic references about 100 years, but using iconography from paintings from about the time where in the West we were talking about Impressionism. So 15th, 16th, 17th, 18th century, like I'm taking this broad Khaja and Safavids in the Iranian culture sphere. We see those movements there in the painting. It did not undergo a high level of systematization. It did, but not in the way we know it in the West. It is a vocabulary that it found in the absolute social dances of the country today. And it's passed on in the family context, imitation-based, and it is developed very, very beautifully by Iranians in the diaspora as well. So it is characterized by a special way of moving arms and hands, a subtleness of the spine. When you see other dances that can visually, to the sort of untrained eye, let's say, look similar, like flamenco or belly dance or other dance styles of the region, you do see a difference when you compare it to the Iranian dance. It's a very beautiful dance style. Of course, it has very subtle hip movements. It's a frequent use of the triple step. There are specific movement transitions. It connects movements to the 6/8 rhythm, which is very difficult for Westerners to follow along. We keep on getting it wrong. Yeah, yeah, everyone is laughing. Exactly. And it is an oral, it's a bodily tradition. Yeah, it's very funny when we try to follow along. So we put it all together into this review, yeah, and then of course, where from here? Well, we want to take it into a critical. And so I can't come from research where I try to take theories and theoretical frameworks from experimental psychology and use dance as a way to address questions that are general in experimental psychology, but using the art from dance. And something that dancers are absolutely aware of, but in the departments where we work, this is sometimes not known, is that dancing is not just about learning steps and skill learning. We know that very important work that has brought dance center stage into the empirical sciences has been action observation, neuroscience of movement work. Very important work by Emily Cross and Beatrice Calvo-Marini and many others after that. But they know, and everybody knows, that dance is not just about impressive movements. Yeah, that would be gymnastic and contortionism. The Cirque du Soleil effect we spoke about yesterday with Emily. Dancing has something more, and dancing is something that is set apart from other bodily practices by being an expressive practice, as we've been saying all along. Yoga teaches you to let go of emotions. Sports, you use emotions to trick your opponent or suppress them to perform better. In dance, we use those emotions and express them. That makes dance different from others. Sylvie Guillemot, dancer, has been quoted for saying, technical perfection is insufficient. And often without the true soul of a dancer, where soul could be understood as the expressivity. So let's put this to empirical tests. So how does emotional expressivity? So in the performative space, when you're a ballet student, you're always taught technical profession is not enough, you have to express. But is that actually true? So does the audience care about it? This is also an empirical question. And this was one that I was able to ask for the first time together with Manos Sakiris at the Warburg Institute. And we made the Warburg Dance Movement Library, where we had beautiful dancers from the Rambert School of Ballet and Contemporary Dance in London, dance sequences of movements neutrally and expressively. And then we had people rate those sequences, and systematically people liked and found more beautiful those movements that had been danced with expressivity, where the dancer had put their soul in, if we want to say it in this way. So our next question is, what is the influence of cultural familiarity of these expressivities? So here we go into the psychological framework that I brought to the collaboration. So there is a huge framework from back to Ekman, back to Darwin, actually, that looks into, expressivity. There might be some universals in the expressivity of emotions. We know the 5 emotions framework, and the basic emotions that Ekman proposed. I'm just whisking through here for the sake of the references. And then there has been some more recent work. It feels a little bit, when you look through the scientific record, like in the 90s, it was all about faces. We don't have a body, very much Western, like let's not talk about the body. And then at the beginning of the 2000s, we have researchers say, oh, no, we also express with the body. So there's research starting to come really beautiful, where I love the stimuli library by Tommy Atkinson in 2004. They were using emotional actions. And then they had people write, so do you recognize that this is, what is this?
Happiness.
Oh, we're clearly happy, yes. So normally angry, what's wrong with you? And then newer stimuli creation. So I love the biomotion lab of Dr. Troye, where they look at same sequence movements. So like walking. So one person here is walking sadly and the other very enthusiastically or happily. Check them out. Wonderful. I love it. And then the research usually is about rating those in terms of what emotion, what do you feel here when you see them? So how could we take this to the first work that I had brought to the table is this more ballet or Western contemporary dance work. Can we do the same sequence approach also with dance movements? Yes, with ballet, definitely, because we learn these movements all the time. And then on stage, we're taught to express them. And a more recent Western dance movement library, where we look really into this 5 emotions framework with dance movements. It was recently published also in scientific reports. And I just want to give you some examples here of these movements that we created with Western dance. And we then ask people usually to rate them one by one in terms of what emotion they see expressed. And then in a different setting, we will ask people to just judge them. We don't tell them that they have been created with different emotional expressivities. We just show them these movements, a lot of them, and then say, rate them on a scale from 0 to 100. How much do you like them? Or how beautiful do you find them? And what we find is that emotion recognition is usually quite good above chance level. We have 5 emotions, the chance level of 20. So here the dotted line is the chance level, and the different emotions are recognized above chance. And interestingly, fear is not recognized very well from these bodily expressions of emotions. And that's actually something that you also find in the non-dance stimuli. So nice replication here. And now let's have a look here, the beauty ratings. So these people did not know there were different emotional expressivities, and still everybody found the joyful expressions more beautiful than all of the others. There are some differences between the other emotions. I find this so fascinating because it's an implicit emotion recognition task. So here you've got design from empirical aesthetics that you can actually use within the realm of experimental psychology as an implicit emotion recognition task. And we took this whole procedure to the Iranian dance project. And we had wonderful Shahzad come from San Francisco to a studio in London and do loads and loads of her dance sequences that she had purposefully created for this project, 100 of them. With these sequences, we had her then, after the conversation we had about expressing in sad and angry fashions, and this was very strange for her, obviously at the beginning, but we managed, and she created those stimuli with us. And I want to really say thank you also to our film team, Sina and Fahima from Wise World AI. They are currently in Portugal setting up their startup, and they collaborated with us as filmmakers on this project and did absolutely amazing work. So the stimuli are filmed in front of a green screen. This then in post-production rendered in this way to become a silhouette that we can use as completely emotional, like visually deprived stimuli, so that there's no information of context. Just as in the Western dance movement stimuli set, I give you some examples here. So you've got the movement, I think it's Raha, and then some Runama, I can't remember the names, but it's like ballet, she gives some names, and yeah. As expressed here, the 5 emotions without facial expressions and music, they are then shown to people. I know, very reductionist scientist I am. The idea is to put it all together in the end. Okay, so we did a series of experiments, 5 in total, actually, online with Iranian, English, and Southeast Asian participants at the end as well. People who had actually been born and raised in the UK. And I'll say a little bit about that in a moment. It was online, and then let me just say there are 5 experiments. The first 4 are sort of validation experiments, because we ended up with all these stimuli, and then we selected the best ones for the 5th experiment, where we then both did emotion recognition and liking, so aesthetic judgment at the end, as an implicit emotion recognition task again. And I just want to say a thing here about this culture. So I said different cultural group, and on Prolific you can kind of choose different cultural group. I find that very weird, because we are so interconnected, and we're not groups of people. We're all humans, and we are connected, and we are enculturated and acculturated to different cultures. So when I moved from Denmark to France, I got enculturated with a different culture, and then to Spain, and I am also enculturated with Spanish culture. So what I find much more reasonable is to develop some scales or questionnaires with which we can actually screen our participants in our studies for which cultural sort of enculturation they have, much more than making groups. And this give us a continuous variable of what your cultural footprint is in a way. It's very, it's I think a better way of doing research. So we've developed a first of these 3 screening tools for the Iranian and English culture spheres. So number 1 is this cultural traditions questionnaire, which asks you things like, do you practice Nowruz, Yalda, Christmas, Easter? Then an arts engagement in childhood questionnaire, because we know from immigration psychology that the first 12 years of age are kind of important for enculturation effects. So here, because our study is so much about the arts, we were talking a lot, like asking questions about, the paintings, the dances, the music that you've been exposed to, and then a culture quiz, which is really like what is included in a
1 minute. Just
oh, no, really. I don't have a watch here. So I'm going to be the one that oh, yes. So with these culture questions, we were able to have a continuous variable in our analysis, so which I will not be able to tell you about, because I will not have time, because I want to just briefly show you what we have done at the very end, where we wanted to, so we replicate, I'm just going to tell you this, we replicate what we find with the Western dance styles. But is it? So we have emotion recognition above chance, And we have the implicit emotion recognition throughout the different emotions. Being more enculturated with Western culture sphere makes you better at emotion recognition, because this is this kind of how do you say, this is the culture where this idea comes from, so that makes sense. But the classification of the misclassifications, they are driven by the Iranian culture. So they see much more joy in the movements, because that's where the dance comes from, this expressivity of joy. And we wanted then to take this, can we then train people in Iranian dance and make their responses more like someone who's more enculturated with dance in an intervention study. And we went to the British Science Festival and we did all the piloting, and then the pandemic hit. And then at some point we were able to merge this all into an online dancing intervention. So this is Shahzad Khossandi during the pandemic coming to the Max Planck Institute for Empirical Studies and using our art lab to do a 2-month intervention study teaching German ladies Iranian dance. And so we did a lot of pre-post that I would just whisk through, looking at their responses to Western and Iranian dance, to the arts of the two cultural spheres, to the humor of the two cultural spheres. And this is very much ongoing analysis that I would love to connect with you about in the future again, trying to replicate some of our previous work about interoception and emotion recognition. And I just need to say thank you to my lovely team of both Iranian and Western collaborators, to the directors at the Max Planck Institute for Empirical Aesthetics who took over the funding, which was wonderful when our British Academy funding ended, which we're also very grateful for. And I also want to make you aware of some videos that we have produced together with this project. And thank you for your attention. And I'm happy to take questions, but also via email.
So I don't know if Valentina is there. So Valentina, I think we'll be very generous and take one question quickly. Olivia, you're up.
How did the collaboration come about?
Can you repeat the question?
I cannot hear.
The question was, how did the collaboration come about?
Oh yeah, it's interesting. Thanks.
So I was having a lot of very good conversations with a sports neuroscientist at UCL, Vincent Wolf. Maybe you've heard of him. Vincent Wolf, very important name. Check him out. And I was interested in doing cross-cultural work, and he had been doing a lot of sports science interdisciplinary work with people from Iran. Actually, I think even with the Olympics too. I can't be sure, but I think so. That was very exciting for me, and that's how the conversation started. And we then got in touch with artists and scientists.